We talk about decentralization and then annihilation. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Moneycoin, Yourcoin, blockchain, baby. Mondays at 1600 hours Eastern Studio A.
Deep understanding must arise during these times of unparalleled deceit. A view into the depths of society upon which this country has fallen, a storm brews upon the horizon. It's been said that those that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear will play a paramount role in the furthering of humanity and civilized society. But can civilized society and humanity survive the coming conflicts not seen since a dawn of time in ages bypast? But you can find true forms of information and knowledge in abundance at revolution.radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the globe. Stand upon the right side of history.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, welcome tonight to the Christine Joanna Hart Show, coming in live from London, and I have a guest. Oh, I hope I'm not echoing. I have a guest from America who's over there. Denny, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're coming in really loud and clear. I'd just like to introduce you. Denny Sargeant is an author, writer, and university instructor, was first introduced to mythology and magic in New York, where he grew up. He has a BA in education, was awarded an MA in ancient history, cross-cultural communications from Western Washington University, where he also taught. He was initiated into the Naga lineage of Tantra in 1980, as taught by Sri Gurudev Dajiti Mahendranath, and has practiced and written about Tantra ever since. From the 1980s, he's helped find and edit journals of contemporary magic, I can't read that, Mandragore, New York City, Eon, and Calico for 5 years. Denny taught, lived, and wrote for 4 years in Japan. He has engaged in extensive traveling and on-site research in more than 25 countries. He previously published books include Global Ritualism, Myth and Magic Around the World, The Tale of Birthdays, The Magical Garden, Your Guardian Angel, The Clean Sweep, Dancing with Spirits, Festivals and Folklores of Japan. And also your book, what is it called, the one that I was very interested in, Denny?
The Naga book?
Yes.
I think it's just called Naga Magic.
Oh, right. Interesting. I mean, while I was drawn to that is I work as a psychic and I do lots of readings for people. I was reading a lot of Indian people, Hindu people, and getting lots of visions of Shiva. And then eventually I found Shiva coming up in my meditations a lot. And then I started doing deep dives into water, using water as a portal. And then suddenly I found myself in caves with Nagas. And I don't really know anything about them. So go ahead. What are they?
Okay. All right. Do you mind if I add one more thing? There are 2 books are missing from that list. I just wanted to throw them out there. The book that's out now is called Werewolf Magic, Authentic Lycanthropy, and it actually connects with Nagas in the sense that it's about animism and getting involved directly with animism. And it's werewolfmagic.com with a K, magic with a K is my site, or Denny Sargeant, author is my website. And the new one coming out is called Werewolf Pack Magic, which is about groups of people who are doing the shape-shifting rituals and activities that I've been laying out. So that's what I'm currently presenting on and going around. I'm about to do a big presentation at a huge conference in Ohio. But it all connects because what I'm mostly interested in is what I'm calling feral magic. It's a revival of animistic and shamanic ideas. So let me bring it back to Naga for you. The Nagas have interested me. When I got initiated in Tantra in 1980 to Sri Gurudev Dadaji Mahendranath in what used to be called the Adinath Sampradaya or lineage, and I call it at this point not Tantric, just to differentiate from the other not lineages. And so I've been a devotee of a number of Tantric gods, similar to Hinduism, but it's not the same. Tantra is not a religion. Tantra is a magical practice. Where we work directly with the gods. And I'm mentioning this because it's really important to the idea of Naga magic. In Hinduism, you usually go to a temple and you usually have a priest work with the god or goddess Shiva, Kali, Lakshmi, whatever. So just like going to a church where, the priest does the mass or whatever. Tantra believes, no, we are all priests and priestesses if we've taken initiation in a particular lineage. And our job is to work directly with the gods. We don't need priests. We don't need priestesses. We do our own work. I'm working on a book right now, actually, about Tantra as a whole. It's going to probably be called something about Tantra. I don't know yet. The publisher's still working it out. But I'll be sure to let you know because I think you would find it very interesting because Nagas are talked about quite a bit in there. So I didn't know anything about Nagas. I mostly worked with Shiva and Kali and Lakshmi and Tripura Sundari and Antara and a lot of other deity forms. And I do pujas. A puja is a ritual where everybody comes together and partakes. It's kind of like a mass, except everyone gets in on it and everybody connects directly with the god or goddess and has the same kind of visionary experience you had, right? And that's what we're about, is immediate one-on-one direct contact with deities. So at one point, I was doing work with Shiva and realized that Shiva always has a serpent around his neck. I'm sure you noticed that when you started working with Shiva. And is that how you connected with Nagas, was Shiva and then seeing the serpents and wondering what that was?
Well, I think it was when I was getting visions of him, I was drawn to plunge underwater and to see myself going underwater and then through the bottom of the river and then find myself somewhere, and they were there.
Yes. So this is a perfect example of why I'm a tantric and not anything else. Because what happened was you got interested and the Nagas took you. They took you there. And that's because you were open and clearly they saw you as a sympathetic, as someone who is reaching out on one level or another to have interaction with them. And that's the basis of Tantra, is that the gods come to us. We don't go to them. Like certain gods and goddesses will come to you and knock on the door and say, I want a relationship with you. And that's what happened to you. It's almost very similar with what happened to me.
Wow. Well, I don't know anything about them. I'm like, whoa, what's happening? And somebody said to me, why did you go underwater? And I said, well, they told me to. Literally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they would, because that's where they are. Naga is very interesting. The word Naga generally means a serpent, but a serpent that is a demigod. Like, and again, we're coming back to, and this is why I wanted to start talking about other things, including my werewolf magic stuff, is because the roots of real magic is animism, and I've spent the last, 10 years, 12 years going backwards. I'm a third degree Welsh traditional witch, and I'm a tantric, and I'm a Thalamite. I'm all these. I'm involved in everything in the magical world. But it's the primordial earth-centered religious traditions based in animism and shamanism that is the most interesting to me right now. So I'm kind of going backwards, right? And when I went through India and I traveled through India and Nepal, I kept encountering various gods and goddesses jumped on me, but I kept encountering the Nagas. People kept taking me to Naga shrines. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I don't know them. And then I started researching. And here's the thing that's interesting about Nagas and other animistic deity forms like Nagas. There's virtually no books written on Nagas. I went to the library. I went online. I looked everywhere. I finally found one book, and I have it here somewhere, which was really more about the art, but the person intelligently wove in about the history of the Nagas, and it was published in the early 1900s. So when I went looking online on Tantric and Hindu websites and stuff to see like, okay, what do people talk about the Nagas and how do you? And somehow I got obsessed with them, and I said, okay, this is how I write books. I get obsessed, and then I go deep dive, and then. It's for my own edification, and then I write all this stuff, and then somebody says, "Oh, you should make it a book," and I always say, "No, I don't want to make it a book," and then I make it a book. So, because at the time I had a pack of stuff on the Nagas, what I found out was that the Nagas are everywhere in India, but they're not in temples, and they're not considered gods, so they're not part of Hinduism really. They're part of folk magic and folk tradition, and where you find the Naga shrines are in villages and outside of villages. And if you look at some of the pictures in the book, and I have great photos too, I can send you if you want. Naga shrines are, I'm sorry, what?
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So some of the pictures you saw in the book are stelae, are stone carved, and they're drawings of stone carved images that show entwined snakes, some with 3 heads, some with 5 heads. Those are what you see at the Naga shrines. So you're walking through the countryside or the jungle, and you come to a small village, and you come out, and there's usually a large tree right at the entrance to the village, and it's a holy tree because trees are also spirits that are connected with Nagas. They're Yakshi. Yakshi are animistic spirits that live in trees, and they're also considered demigods and very important. And people leave offerings to the demigods, and they leave offerings to these spirits, and then they go to the temples and they give offerings to the gods who are considered sort of higher above and maybe not so interested in our day-to-day work. But the demigods and the spirits and the nature spirits are much more approachable. So you come up and you see this tree, and then you see an image of Ganesh, and Ganesh is always there, and there's a bunch in the book about why. But Ganesh is, you always begin every Tantric and every Hindu ceremony by invoking Ganesh. He's maybe the oldest Hindu / Tantric god, but he's also in Buddhism. He's everywhere. But the thing about Ganesh is he also is he's Ganesh come up. So Ganesh is called Ganapati. I'm going a little bit far, but I'll bring it back, I promise. Ganapati means the Lord of the Ganas, and he's the son of Shiva. And he's in charge of the Ganas. Now, you're going to hear the word Gana thrown around. Ganas are nature spirits, sometimes called demons, sometimes called, like angelic beings. But what they are is they're just feral nature spirits. And Nagas are considered part of the Gana. So Ganesh is sort of in charge of sort of keeping an eye on and keeping the horde of nature spirits going in the right directions so that Shiva and Shakti, the god and goddess of that, are okay and everything's fine. So I said, oh, wow, okay, there's Ganesh, there's these stone tablets of serpents, there's offerings there, what's going on here? So I said, oh, is this a temple? And no, it's not a temple, it's a shrine. It's a shrine to the Nagas. And I said, well, why do you have a shrine for the Nagas? And they just look at me and they say, oh, because there's Nagas living here. I mean, it's like going to a place where there's raccoons and you leave out food for the raccoons. That's kind of their view of it. So I said, okay, I went back. I came back from India and I had a million things going on in my head, but Naga stuck with me, and I said, I want to know what these are because they're not gods. There's no tantras about them, though they're mentioned a lot in tantra, more in tantra than they are in like Hindu scriptures, but there's like nothing about the scriptures. They're mentioned very briefly here and there, and there's certain ones of them. It's in Tibet and Tibetan sources where I found more, and there are 8 Navanagas, i.e. the Naga lords. So I started digging into this and said, what is this? What's going on here? So what I found out is Naga has several meanings. It means serpent, but it also means a healing herb or a healer. It also means spring. And this is probably the root of the Sanskrit for Naga, is a spring that comes up out of the earth. See, I told you I would bring it back around. This is why you ended up in water, because Nagas live in water. Even though they're worshipped in the jungle, where they live is almost always a spring. And the spring is the route down into the underworld and down into where the massive under earth oceans are and rivers and everything else that feed the whole planet. And that's where the Naga live, which is where you ended up. And that's why. And when I've done serious ritual work with the Nagas, they take you down there, and where you end up is a city. Now, here's my question for you. Did you end up in like a palace or a city or a village with the Nagas?
Yeah, I ended up in a room. It seemed candle lit. I went down. When I got to the bottom of the river, they took me in like a crystalline lift, and the lift went down through the earth, and it went really, really fast. And then it went to a room, and in the room there was Shiva and lots of candles, and I sat in front of Shiva, and I mostly got him purifying me. And he said, I will be able to enter once I purify. And he was showing me pictures of my childhood, saying, I've got a lot of bitterness in me, I've got to let go of it. And I'm just at that stage now where he's saying I can come in, but only if I let go of certain things. And I felt underneath me the snakes. Oh, and there was one thing he made me go into. It seemed like it was a glass cabinet, and I went in there and I felt all these snakes over me, and they were inside of me and outside. And I felt myself being like really, really purified with kind of like a blue flame.
That actually makes total sense. Did you see any jewels, gold, like beautiful things?
I saw the eyes of the Naga, and they seemed like jewels. They seem really beautiful.
So in your visionary work, so Shiva basically said you can't enter, and I'm going to give you the name of where they live. It's called Bogavati. Bogavati, Shiva said to you, you can't enter until you're purified, and then you can enter Bogavati. You can enter where they live. And it's a vast, everybody has the same idea, though everybody sees it differently. It's a vast, astral world that is full of a palace with jewels and gold and trees and beautiful things. And the Nagas sometimes show up as large serpents. Sometimes they're half serpent, half human. The top half is human. Sometimes they're humans. And they can also come to this earth, this plane of existence, and they can show up as different things. They can show up as a human, a very attractive human, male or female. They can show up as a serpent, and they can show up as half serpent and half male. And you'll see the Nagas everywhere. Like in Thailand, they're everywhere. In Southeast Asia, they're everywhere. In Japan, they're everywhere. Throughout Asia, they're everywhere. And in China, Naga became dragons. And I'm not making any of this up. I found this out through research. Like this idea of a serpentine entity is everywhere. It's, especially in Asia is where it's very big. And I when I was digging all this out, I was like, all right, I need to figure out. I want to connect with these entities because the Tantric god forms are very easy. I know, like Shiva, I have mantras that will connect me with different aspects of Shiva. And I have, I know the Bija mantras, Kali is Kring and Shiva is Om and Lakshmi is Hring. And I know how to connect sort of open up I guess it's kind of like this. It's kind of like Skype. I know how to open up the Skype to a variety of deities that I work with, but there was nothing. How do you contact the Naga? There was nothing. And I went online and looked and finally found in a Reddit forum run by a Hindu Tantric a guru who was going back and forth about the Naga with his devotees. And finally, one of them said, can you tell us what the mantra is again? And he wrote it. And that's what's in the book, the mantra of how to call them. So you've got the book. And what you want to do is you want to look, there's the mantra. I really don't want to say it all over the phone. People can look it up online or they can get the book. Because mantras generally should be transmitted directly. Book is okay, but me saying it online is probably weird. But it's a very simple mantra, and that actually opens the door to directly working with the Naga. You got tagged and sort of pulled in, but I think if you start using that mantra, you'll find a lot more success with it. Anyway.
Really? What was the bit where he took me into the glass thing where they went inside me? Is that more purifying?
Yes, it is. And we can pull back a minute and let me talk a little bit about like why do Indians and Nepalese go to the Nagas? They go to the Nagas and most of the Nagas, and then I'm going to come back and talk about sort of the structure of the Nagas and who they are and what they are. But a lot of the Naga, the top 8 Nagas, the Naga Navas, the Nava Nagas they call them, are the lords of all the Nagas, right? And the chief one is called Nagaraj, the king of Nagas, and that's who sits around Shiva's shoulders. Is a Naga and is the king of Nagas. And different books. There's one of 2 Nagas. Everything's in my book, but there's one of 2 Nagas that could be the king. But there's one Takshakaya, I think is his name, who is generally identified as the king of Nagas. So I want to know, like, people go and they worship Nagas. Like, why are they doing this? It has to do with serpents being poisonous, and it actually spreads across the world in some ways. So very, very quickly, when the rainy season hits in India and Nepal, the cobras and poisonous snakes are sort of flooded out of their burrows, and all of a sudden they're around, and that's when people get bit by serpents. So there's a queen, there's actually a goddess associated with the Nagas called Maharasa, who is often shown with lots of serpents and has a serpent over her. And she's invoked, or the Naga spirits at the shrines are invoked to protect you from poison, from being bit by a serpent. But also the poison from the cobras is used medicinally in Ayurvedic and other ways of healing. So there's this connection between the rainy season, which brings life, and the serpents. So there's always been this mythic thing, like when the rain comes and gives us food, the serpents come out and they're seen as fertility symbols, and they're seen as positive, but also there's a two-edged sword. They can be dangerous. So you work with them so that, you don't get bit, or you are kind to them. In fact, a lot of people during this time have special little shrines in their house for the serpents, and they put out milk. That's a traditional offering to the Nagas, is milk. If you ever want to work directly with them, give them a little thing of milk. Or if you really want to do some serious magic with them, you give them an egg, like a chicken egg. And but so people have these serpents coming into their house and drinking the milk and leaving them alone, because the cobras and the other serpents don't want to hurt anybody. They just get flooded out, and the last thing they want to eat rats, which is why they're prized. But also their venom is used for healing. So all these things were sort of intertwined in India and Nepal. And as I'm researching, I'm saying, oh, I see. They're not seen as evil or bad. They're about purification, you see, because during that time, as when the flood is coming, when the monsoons come and everything, gets into that state, it's also a time of purifying yourself through Hindu or Tantric practices. And working directly with the Nagas releases your fear and your anxiety, and you start to bond, you create a relationship with them, so they become a positive thing. And so I ask people, So you think Nagas are good? You think they're good for you and the snakes? And they say, oh yes, if we didn't have them eating the rats, we would lose all our crops because there's rats everywhere. And that's who gets them. They don't have house cats really. So having the serpents run around and eat rats is like a huge boon. So they start to see the serpents as bringing fertility to the fields, removing pests like rats, and therefore getting rid of negativity and bad energy, and bringing good energy. And of course, Kundalini, which I'm sure you've heard of, Kundalini is the serpent energy that's supposed to climb up your middle pillar. It's way more complicated than that. It's generally a wave of electromagnetic energy that you break through the walls of it, and so you have to work with the two sides of your body and energy. There's a lot of conversation there, but there's a deep connection between the Kundalini and the Naga, especially the Nava Naga or the queen goddess of Nagas. So there's lots of interconnections between sexuality and tantra and sitting and raising the Kundalini energy is connected with Nagas and with the serpentine idea or archetype, right? So I did all this research and I had piles of stuff and I'm like, all right, I started to put together rituals, and that's what's in the book, which you have. And I started with one, I think I call it Meet the Naga or something obnoxious like that. But I had a simple ritual, and I said, okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to create a Nava shrine in my backyard, which I did under the trees. You're supposed to be in front of a big tree. I had a big tree. I had some water there, a bowl of water for them. Better if you have a pond or if you have a lake or you have a river, but you can have a pond, a big thing of water. So if you want to bring them, these are things that will help you connect. Water is absolutely the key. That's why I know that you got pulled in by the Naga, because water is the way they go in and out of the spiritual world. And I sat there and I had an egg and I found and I created, I'm a ceramic artist, so I created a stele for the Naga and I put it up and I did the whole thing. And sat there and did my meditation and did all this stuff and did the chanting, and I followed through the ritual. And I had a powerful, almost psychedelic experience where I was sitting there, calling to them, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I don't, there's plenty of water here, that's for sure, but I didn't know what the connection would be. And they came, like they really came, like all of a sudden, I'm in deep meditation with my eyes closed and I feel this energy come into my circle, and I sort of open my eyes and I can see I'm surrounded by these serpents. And I freaked out, I said, oh damn, there they are. And I started to communicate with them, and they started to feed me information and imagery, and I got on my sketch pad, and all the images you see in the book came from this encounter I had. And they took me down and they showed me things, and they pointed out to areas I should look for more information to add to, which I did. And I've, since then I always have a Naga shrine in my backyard. They bring money too. I don't know if I said that, but they're famous for bringing money and riches. And once I connected with the Nagas, some of this stuff is in my book. Once I started connecting with them, I swear this is the weirdest thing. Little piles of coins started to show up all over my house. Now, I don't really use coins much, and I certainly don't stack them up and leave them, But, I mean, it just got to be ridiculous. Like, I'd go, oh, my God, I'd sit down at my couch, and there'd be a pile of coins. So they were trying to give me, little presents and things. Now, what's awesome about Nagas too, and you can interrupt me at any point if I'm talking too much, but they're deeply connected with the environment, and who works with the Nagas more than anybody are Tibetan Buddhists, because from their point of view, the Nagas are angry, and we have to work with them and help work with them so that to heal the environment, because Nagas tend to live in ponds, rivers, springs, and lakes. And most lakes, and it's interesting because in Japan, every pond or lake has a little plaque that shows a white snake, and it says, "Do not swim here. Do not mess around with this lake." They don't use the word Naga, but it's essentially there's a Naga living here, which is how it is in India as well. So the idea is that each body of water, the spirit is personified as a serpent form. And you see this everywhere. You see it in Southeast Asia and Thailand too. There's signs saying, there's a serpent in this river. So it's interesting, like, are Nagas the personified deity archetype form of the river, of the lake, of the water that you went down into, of underground streams? Some people thought that the subterranean streams that flow underneath the crust of the earth, that those were in fact the Nagas personified in physical form. And where they live, Bogavati, is down, of course, amongst all those things. And you're in UK, and of course, a lot of people know about the ley lines, and a lot of the ley lines follow the rivers, the underground rivers. Who knows why, due to some magnetic, or I don't know why they do, but I've been reading about this as well. So if you think of a ley line, and you think of an underground river, and you think of Nagas, they're all interconnected. So I came to realize, like, the Nagas were personifications of the Earth Mother. They're extensions of that as well. So I'm kind of going all over the place here, but it is kind of fascinating stuff. They're also connected with healers. There's a Hindu Tantric god called Danten, who's the god of healing, and his shrines are always at springs, and there's always a Naga temple there. So.
So the place that they live,
Bogavati,
that is actually at the center of the earth? It's under the earth, is it?
There's, like with all these sort of mythic astral places we talk about, there's several different views of it. The one thing everybody agrees on, it's under the earth. It's under the ocean. It's under the earth, under the ocean, under the water. Like it's down there. So like that's kind of where you got pulled. In my opinion, if I was sitting here doing a reading for you or talking to you, I would say you got pulled to the entrance of Bogavati. And Shiva said, you have to do some things before you're allowed in. And that's awesome because Shiva he's the feral god. He's the god of wild things and animals. And his helper is the head of the Nagas who sits around his shoulder. Often you'll see the images of Shiva with the serpent's head near his ear because Shiva's listening to the Nagas because the Nagas know everything. And Shiva can just sit there in meditation. The king of Nagas can say in his ear, here's the key mantra you're looking for. Here's this. This is what's happening under the earth. Here's what's happening over here. So I think that's what I think happened to you. I think you're one step away from Bogavati. And so I continued my work with the Nagas and got entrance into Bogavati, and it was astounding. I mean, it was actually really sweet. Like, the Nagas are super nice. Everybody's scared of snakes, but they show up and they're like, hi.
So what do you do when you go in there? I mean, what is the benefit of going
I
in?
listen. I pretend I am a student, which I am, and I pretend that they are the gurus, which they are. They're far more powerful and spiritual than I am. And I listen and I ask questions. If I have specific questions, I do. You can ask for things, but I mostly want to know. That's my thing. So I'd say, tell me about you guys. Like, tell me what this is. Tell me what's here. Why are these gems on the palace? Like, why do you do this? And they give me all kinds of information. Now, this may just be personal for me, right? Like, your experience is going to be completely different than my experience, but this is what I'm after, mostly knowledge, and there wasn't much I wanted them to do for me, except give me more ability to see and communicate with them. And they were super excited I was writing a book. They're like, oh, good. You've got to put in a lot about the environment. I said, okay, I'm going to put a lot about the environment. And then literally like in the middle of this, like one day I'm just sort of looking on websites, and all of a sudden I see a reference to Naga and Tibetan Buddhism. And I'm like, oh, and all of a sudden, whoosh, I opened up a whole universe. The Dalai Lama has a hidden temple behind him. This isn't conspiracy theory. There's a book on it called the Tantric Temple of the Dalai Lama. There's all the pictures. And there are Nagas all over this temple. And I had no idea that Tibetan Buddhism and the Nagas were big. Well, they're very big. And the first thing I discovered was, I assume you've seen images of the Buddha sitting in meditation with a giant serpent, like as an umbrella over him. Have you seen these pictures?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a Naga. That's a Naga, and it's a Naga, and I can't remember his name. It starts with an M. Mayatsendra Naga, something like that. And he is a Naga who converted to Buddhism, because the spirits can. And the Buddha, if you read about Buddhism, spirits can be converted to Buddhism and be part of this idea of everybody attaining liberation. A lot of Tibetan deities started off as Bon Po, gods and goddesses, and Padmasambhava went to this. The legend is he went to Nepal and he got all these gods and he converted them to Tibetan Buddhism, so that they could then still be gods and still be spirits, but work towards the liberation of all people. So Buddha himself was protected by a Naga, and then I started researching that it was everywhere. And the most interesting rituals that I found were actually Tibetan Buddhist. The stuff that happens in India is very personal, and there aren't a lot of written texts at all. I haven't really found any. But the villagers go and they do their thing and they know what to do, and each village has its own, each village that works with the Naga has its own thing and has its own. So it's all, it's not high religion. Like Hinduism, high religion, which is pretty standard, even though it's different everywhere in India. It's folk religion. It's like Irish people or British people working with the elves and fairy. You know what I mean?
So the Tibetans really get stuck in and want to be one with them?
Not only that, they believe in them strongly. They build beautiful. There's in Kathmandu, the most stunning Naga temple I ever saw, which is very interesting to your vision. It has a huge pool in the middle that was empty when I saw it, and huge statues of Nagas. And it used to be filled with serpents, and they would come out and do rituals and feed them every day. And now they're not doing that. But so when I found out what they do, I said, well, why are you working with the Nagas so much? Nepal is fantastic, by the way. People took me around once they realized I was into this and I was a serious devotee. They took me to the temples. They taught me stuff. It was really wonderful. But what the Tibetan Buddhists do is they are going into rivers that are polluted and lakes that are polluted and ponds that are polluted, and they're either creating a Naga shrine or they're going in and doing Naga work to try to appease the Naga, who are furious that we are destroying the environment. They are essentially environmental guardians. Just like they protect the Buddha, their goal as the water spirits and the water demigods is to protect the earth, and the water is the blood of our planet, right? So the fact that we're poisoning things and throwing garbage in them and chemicals is making them very, very angry. And so the Buddhists go into these, and you can find it online. There's a few videos on YouTube of Buddhists going in. They wade into these ponds, and they do an entire ritual, and they leave milk and they leave things, and they ask the Nagas for purification, and the whole point is to purify the pond or the lake or the river so that the toxicity can be removed. Thus, your experience with purification. They are deeply into purifying you, purifying the impurities and poisons that have entered your body, and also they want it to purify the rivers and the streams, and because we're destroying everything. So the Buddhists are like, they key in. I mean, they talk to them and work with them, and they say no, they're really angry, and this is why people get drowned in rivers and all that times. You know, they're saying that there's a lot of hostility in nature in general. In the animistic spirits, there's a lot of hostility right now because of what we're doing. We're destroying their home. We're destroying the home of animals.
Should I try and work with them on a daily basis, do you think?
You certainly can. I daily might be a lot, but I think once, do you have a house? Do you have a yard?
No.
No? Okay. Well, just having like a bowl of water and an image of the Nagas, if you have it, or you can actually use the book. My book has a lovely cover by a fantastic artist named Kat Leno. That image is actually the yantra you use for invoking the Naga. But if you, I assume you live near parks, you probably live somewhere near a creek or a spring or something. Yeah. Going to places like that is really potent. And using the mantra, doing some meditation, offering a little milk or cream to the water, that's something that they like. Even an egg. An egg is a much more serious ritual thing to do, but mostly they want attention and love, and they want people to help purify the environment so that we survive. That was the most, when I asked them what they wanted to tell me, that was what I got. And then I discovered the Buddhist stuff, and I said, oh. And you know.
Do you think that are they the jinn? Have you heard of the jinn? Are they part of the jinn?
No, the jinn. Okay, so this is one reason why I like to talk about werewolf magic, because werewolf magic is something I've moved into now, which is about bringing up your own animal self, because we've become so civilized. You have a breakthrough with the Nagas. People have breakthroughs with animistic spirits all the time, but they don't accept that reality, and so they just are blind, deaf, and dumb. Werewolf magic is about people bringing up their own animal self. We have a primordial animal self. It has to do with the root base in your brain, what Carl Sagan called the dragon mind. Some people call it the animal mind. The whole idea of werewolf magic is that there are all these cults around the world, and I won't spend a lot of time talking about it because I'm hoping everybody buys the books because they're wonderful. But from ancient Greece and Rome and all over the world, and the ancient historians like Herodotus, they all talked about these werewolf cults. I got excited. I'm like, there's like people, Herodotus is one of the greatest writers ever, said, oh yeah, I watched this entire tribe turn into werewolves for a week. And then there's Celts that turn into werewolves. And in Ireland, there's the Ossory tribe in Ireland that still is connected with werewolf. Anyway, so I started to try to figure this all out, like what's going on. Once I started to work with being able to bring my animal self up and drop my higher cortex down and like stop thinking and stop cognating all the time, all of a sudden I was able to see things and do things within nature. I was accepted within the matrix of nature and then became part of the ecosystem instead of just someone who is blind to the ecosystem. Now, I'm mentioning this because the Naga want the same thing. They want people to reconnect with their ecosystem. Native Americans get this. They talk about deer and bear and cougars as their brothers, as people. They don't say that they're animals and that they're dumb and that we don't care about them. And they also don't believe that a lot of people in our culture believe that God gave us the right to do whatever we want with nature, that we're the ones with souls. Animals don't have souls. They're just something that we can chew up and use the way we want. We have a whole consciousness of just devouring and destroying nature any way we feel like it because we've been entitled to do it, right? Well, all the animal spirits, including the jinn, including the Naga, including the wolf spirits and the bear spirits, are all furious because we have chosen to disconnect ourselves from our ecosystem. We no longer feel when we go into a place that's been poisoned, we don't feel it anymore. Now, when I go into a trance state and walk into a place that's been poisoned, I feel it. I get sick. I know it. And so when you start doing Naga work and if you start getting connected with the Nagas, they're going to purify you. And when they purify you, which is what's happening to you, then you're going to be able to feel that illness. You're going to be able to go into a pond and say, this pond is dead. This pond is polluted. This is terrible. I feel bad about that, which is exactly what Native Americans talk about in their poetry all the time is, going into a woods where all the animals have been killed and feeling sick, like their brothers and sisters have been destroyed. So, and that people don't care about maintaining the environment anymore. They just want to take and take and take and take and take. And so you're clearly you're sympathetic, and you're very probably very attuned to spiritual forces, and you connected with the Nagas, and they saw you and they got you and they said, she's gonna help. She's gonna be one of the people who's gonna help save the planet. I mean, it's a little melodramatic, but that's essentially what they want. I mean, it's why I wrote the book. Is I want people to reconnect with the animal spirits, the animistic spirits that really are the embodiment of the powers of nature, and it's how we interface with nature directly. But you can't do it when you're up here in your upper cortex, like saying, I'm everything, I'm a human being, nothing else matters but me, and I want whatever I want, and this vibe.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because when I did the meditation today, when I think it was Shiva that came inside me as I was in that little room, and he said to me, remember, you're just an animal, you've got to accept this. And I saw a horse.
Nice.
How much I was like the horse. And then I saw a little mouse, and I saw how much I was like the mouse. And I thought, yes, I'm an animal. And I really felt it. Yeah.
So Shiva, because I'm writing my Tantra book now, which I've been working on for 30 years, and hopefully it'll be out and you can see it, because I'm really taking my time and trying to do it right. But one of the things to know about Tantra as opposed to Hinduism is that the earliest form of Shiva is 4,000 years old. It was found in Mohenjo-daro. And it shows Shiva with horns, bull horns. And he's got hooves, and he's sitting in a typical meditation posture, and he's surrounded by all the jungle animals, including bulls and tigers and everything. And this form of Shiva, in India they call Pashupati Shiva. Pashu means beast. Pashupati Shiva means he's the lord of the beasts. So the earliest Shiva, the most primordial Shiva, is the lord of the beasts. So he is the one, you see, who can connect us with the animistic spirits. The sort of, slick, very pretty Shiva that you often see pictures of now, who looks he looks like a model, The earlier images of Shiva are quite different. He's a very feral, wild, often naked. Sometimes he just wears a loincloth of tiger skin. He has nothing. He sits under trees. The only things he carries around are things that people discard. He's a complete wanderer and a complete ascetic. He's the wild man. He's the woodwose, the wild man, right? And he's the one who can connect us with these things, with these entities, these what I call Ghana, right? These spirits that can tell us what's going on with nature, and can pull us in. So that's exactly what's happening to you. He's saying the purification. It's hilarious for me personally, because the purification he wants from you, he wants to give you, is one of exactly what I do in Werewolf Magic. He wants you to separate from this modern cognitive, upper cortex, and bring yourself down and relate to being an animal. And the fact that he said to you, you're an animal, that's the first thing the werewolf spirit said to me when it showed up in meditation. Like, you're an animal and you forgot, and that's why you're suffering. I was in a very, if you read the book, I was in a terrible state at the time and had lost everything and blah, blah, blah. And in my meditation, a wolf spirit came up and kept coming every day. And and I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why I'm dealing with this. And it finally came in and said, look, you're on the edge of like really, really not being well. And I'm here to tell you, the animal spirits are here to tell you, you need to get back into nature. You're sealed off from nature like all the other people around you. And that's why you become toxic and why you become, why you need purification. So the werewolf spirit pulled me into the woods to rip off all my clothes and go completely insane and lose my mind and get rid of my constant chattering ego brain. And all of a sudden I was able to connect. And I related to the Nagas because it was the same experience in a much wider, more intense, radical way. But it was the same experience I had when I started connecting with the Naga. All of a sudden, they pulled me into their consciousness, right? Which is what happened to you. And they're saying that, you are an animal. This is the first thing these animalistic spirits want to make sure that you get. You're an animal. And the fact that they showed you a horse and like you got it, and they showed you a mouse, you got it, that was very cool, actually.
Thank you.
I almost got a slap, like you're an animal, stop it, And,
it's odd. It stayed with me all day. That realization, and that we are, and that we just want love. We're little sort of beings. We have our food and we sniff around for things, and we just want to be loved and petted, and we are really like that. And we think too much. I'm just noticing we just got 9 more minutes, so I don't know if you want to spend those telling people where they can get hold of you and.
Okay. I'm really, though this is an excellent conversation, and I just want to say about you and your work, you're on your way, and I would say continue connecting with the Naga, and if you're going to ask them for anything, ask them to see Bogavati, and be aware that not only are we animals, but it's not so much that we're not animals, we're always animals, but what you got was like a refresher course in what you need to do to reconnect, because once you reconnect with your animal self, then you can walk into the woods or a park and you can feel the tree spirits. You can feel the Naga spirits. You can start to feel and see, like literally I'll go into a trance state where I'll see the web of interconnection between everything. Ecosystems are so complicated. Scientists have said over and over and over again, we cannot understand the complexity of an ecosystem. Only Gaia, only the earth can understand the miraculous complexity. But once you're in that animal state, then you can feel it. You stop being separated from it. You become part of it. And that's the goal. And that's the goal of my book in Werewolf Magic too, is I tell people, like, you need to go out into the woods actively and reconnect with Earth. You can get a hold of me through werewolfmagic.com, and it's just werewolf and magic with a K at the end. A little bit of Crowley. Werewolfmagic.com. You also can find me on Facebook at Denny Sargeant author.com. You can find me on Instagram at DennySargeantAuthor.com, and I assume my name is somewhere here, DennySargent author.com, and on Facebook, Denny Sargeant Author, and I will probably be on a couple of other things. I have yet to do Twitter, but I'm very excited for my books coming out. I think if you get I think if you can get a hold of Werewolf Magic, this will make sense in terms of how I'm connecting it with the Nagas. You'll see that it's about a return to animism. And also it talks about how I actually met and hung out with Siberian shamans. And when I traveled in Guatemala, I met a Guatemalan shaman and got taken to a meeting of shamans. And so got to interconnect with how they bring the spirits in and whatnot.
I think you sent me it, didn't you?
I did.
I'll read that excitedly. I'm going to read the Naga book first. So it'd be nice to have you back as well to talk about this, because, I find it really interesting. And, after a couple more weeks, I think I'll probably have more experiences because, I'm doing it daily. And, it does feel like I'm being sucked into something. Scary in some ways, exciting.
Well, of course. Of course. I mean, there is no good initiatory experience that isn't frightening at some point. I mean, we keep building these little bubbles around us, these walls around us, and this is part of our problem, right? And breaking through them is a little bit frightening, but then all of a sudden you get pulled into the water like you, and all of a sudden you're here, and all of a sudden things are happening, and they're experiences that are important. They're powerful spiritual experiences, and they come from nature. So jinn, by the way, are just more animist experience, but they are in a specific part of the world. But are there jinn Naga? I don't know. I'm gonna have to find that out. That's a good one.
I know. It's quite interesting. I had a sheikh on the show who does a lot of stuff with the jinn, and ever since then I've had some weird experiences. Oh,
well, it's not different.
Yeah.
It's not so different from what we're talking. It's not so different from what we're talking about. They're just we're returning back to dealing with animistic spirits and entities, and this is really what we're lacking and what we need. I think when we start to see nature as something that's alive and interconnects with us and communicates with us, whether it's through Nagas or wolf spirits or jinn or whatever, then we start to respect it a little bit more and realize that we're part of this web. We're not pulled away from it. God didn't put us on top of this like mountain that we can just do anything we want to nature. We are part of this web, and this is why our planet is in trouble right now. So we're not paying attention. So
I know.
The Nagas want you to pay attention.
Well, it's interesting. I'm a writer like you, and so I do. I think they do want me to, start writing about them and or my own experiences in some kind of way. I felt that, and I thought, well, yeah, I'd like somebody to do something with my gift, not to just write, silly little love stories or stuff like that, something important.
It's why I write my books. I don't make any money really on them. I write them to educate people, and because the gods and the spirits come to me and say, please do this, please. Like you're someone who found out about my book and looked at it, and now we're having a conversation, and that gives me so much pleasure and joy that I mean, I'm a university professor, as is what I've done my whole life, is teaching, but the fact that someone's read my book and had an experience, like a legit experience, that makes perfect sense to me. Everything you said about your experience makes perfect sense to me. So it's really well done. And now you have the Naga book. There's a simple ritual there to introduce yourself to the Naga. Try some of these simple rituals when you do your work next time.
I will. Thank you. I'm looking forward to reading it. And thank you so much for coming on. I can hear our music playing it out. Thank you. Come back again.
Thank you. Too. Thank you. Om Shanti Shiva Shanti.
Thank you everyone for listening, and see you again next week. And what a great show.
Bye.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You going back in? There's still men out there. God damn. When I go home, people ask me, hey, Hoot, why do you do it, man? Why? You some kind of war junkie? I won't say a goddamn word. Why? They won't understand. They won't understand why we do it. They won't understand it's about the men next to you. And that's it. That's all it is.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, #1 listener-supported radio, the printing press for freedom at a time when freedom is needed the most.
I am Bill Johnson. Some consider my efforts to be an underground law school. I am not an attorney, and I do not give legal advice. I teach. That's lawful and legal. Consider yourself served. You are to appear Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, Studio A. My forte? Foreclosure and contract law. Grab your legal pad and pen. Learn a broad spectrum of law spanning administrative, criminal, family,